today I'm going to be telling a story about how forgiveness was rewarded with massive profit. So this is the story of an interaction between two men, one man being Ratan Tata and the other one being Bill Ford, and yes, from Ford Motors. And to give a bit of a background of the two characters of this story, most of us are aware of the broad strokes history of Ford Motors, so I won't really waste your time by going into the details about that. But I'll give a bit of an introduction into Ratan Tata because although he is very famous in India, he is not quite as well known as Bill Ford outside of India. So the Tata business empire was actually started in 1870 by Ratan's great-grandfather. His name was Jamseti, and he basically brought India into the Industrial Revolution. And in subsequent generations of the Tata family empire, they've also brought India to the Olympics and into aviation. And now fast forwarding to the modern age, the Tata group is now nicknamed as the salt to software conglomerate, meaning that they basically have a finger in every pie of India's industries. So Ratan took over the family business in 1991. Alright, so now that I've got that covered, we can get into the actual story. So the year is 1998, and Ratan is doing pretty well at selling Tata trucks in India. So he decided to expand into the passenger car market. But unfortunately, it flopped. And so now he's in a bit of a hard position because he'd built the factories, he'd recruited the workers, but he just couldn't see a way that he could turn this car brand around. So he decided to sell it to another car company. And so he called around all the large car manufacturers around the world. And after making a few of his phone calls, Bill Ford decided to hear him out. So he said, yeah mate, no worries, jump on an aeroplane, we'll have a discussion, we'll see how this goes. And so Ratan and his team of executives flew over to Detroit in the United States, and they started the meeting. But unfortunately, to Ratan and his executive team's surprise, when they arrived in Detroit for the meeting with Bill Ford, it was not a proper discussion, it was basically just a 3-hour condescending lecture. Now, some of the incredibly kind quotes that Bill Ford can be noted as saying to Ratan Tata include, "You do not know anything. Why did you start a passenger car division at all? And we'll be doing you a favor by buying a car division." And as for why Bill did this, like whether it was a negotiation tactic or whether he just skipped his morning coffee, there's no way of really knowing. But either way, Ratan and his team had to return back to Mumbai with their tail between their legs. And this humiliation really got to Ratan Tata, and he changed his mind about selling Tata's passenger car division. And now he had a renewed focus. So he threw everything that he had at the company, and over the years he made small incremental improvements, not to be a great car company, but at least to be a surviving one that wasn't losing a ton of money every year. Alright, but now let's fast forward to 9 years later in 2008, and the global financial crisis is in full swing. So Tata Motors was still travelling along fine. They weren't doing well, but they weren't doing badly. But Ford Motors was in serious financial trouble. And to make matters even worse for Ford, they owned two car companies, being Jaguar and Landrover, who at the time were just losing tons of money every year. And Bill had legitimate fears that those two car brands were going to sink his entire Ford motoring empire. And so he was very keen for someone to buy the car companies Jaguar and Land Rover, being JLR or Jaguar Land Rover. And so he was now in the exact same situation that Ratan was in only 9 years earlier. And so he started up calling all of his competitors in the hopes that someone would buy JLR or Jaguar Land Rover from him. And so when Ratan got this phone call, he told Bill to fly to Mumbai so they can discuss. And many people were assuming that Ratan was just going to use this opportunity to take revenge against Bill Ford and just giving him a 3-hour condescending lecture and wasting his time without any interest at all of buying the car companies. And Bill Ford had a bit of an expectation of this as well, except he was desperate, so he took the meeting anyway. And I can see why he's desperate, because it's not only his name at stake, it is his father's name at stake, and it is his grandfather's name at stake, and it is the thousands upon thousands of employees that work for all the motoring companies that he was responsible for. So he was under an incredible amount of pressure. So Bill flew over to Mumbai along with his executives, and he sat down and met with Rata. However, Ratan did something very unexpected here. He told him to like and subscribe. Okay, well that part's a lie. But what actually happened though was that Ratan actually sat down and heard him out, and he decided to buy JLR from Bill for $2.3 billion. And one of the kind quotes that came out of this meeting actually was a kind quote when Bill Ford said, "You are doing us a big favour by buying JLR, thank you." And so for this act in itself, it just shows how much of a great man Ratan Tata is. I mean, how many other people would just use this as a cheap opportunity to take revenge? And that story in itself is pretty nice and inspiring, but the story does not end here. In fact, all of Ratan's mates thought that he was an idiot for doing this, because the two car brands were really struggling and there were massive financial black holes, meaning that money goes in but money never seems to come back out. And at the time that he purchased it, he had no idea how he was going to be able to accomplish this. And so it was a massive risk that Ratan had taken in order to help a man who had been so horrible to him only 9 years earlier. But fortunately for Ratan, he had recruited some incredibly smart people to work for him in his early days from Tata Motors, and they were very quickly able to turn JLR to become very profitable brands. And not only profitable, but the most profitable out of everything in the Tata motoring division. And whilst all this was going on, Tata was still running his own passenger car division alongside this in India. And in 2009, Tata launched a new model of car being the Tata Nano, which sold for $2,000. So if you're watching us on one of the more expensive iPhones or one of the best Samsungs, this is an entire car that is cheaper than the phone that you're watching this on. So Ratan was in a bit of a unique situation where he owned both two luxury car brands and also the cheapest of a cheap car brand. You know what I'm trying to say. Anyway, so with JLR being turned around by executives, it seems that karma has rewarded his forgiveness. And the more I research this guy, the more I find out positive things about him. I mean, here's something else. Although he owns these two luxury car brands, he still chooses the $2,000 Tata Nano as his daily commute car. And to me, this is just another example of how truly successful people prioritize practicality over prestige. Oh, and I should mention as well that he donates 2/3 of his annual income to charity. And in 2021, that figure was $100 billion. And so at this point of the story, we are pretty much at the happily ever after for Ratan Tata, as Jaguar, Landrover and Tata Motors are going along very smoothly and successfully. And so to conclude this video, I just think the world needs more people like Ratan Tata. What an excellent human being, right? Anyway, thanks for watching, and if you like money stories like this, don't forget to, well, you know your drill.